And away we go.
Mhm. All right. So today we're going to be talking to all of you about how to get your academic conference proposals accepted. And Scott and I have got all the secrets to share with you. So let's start with our disclosures. I am Dr. Kaelee Brockway. I am the founder of drbthept.com, which is a healthcare education consulting company.
And I'm Dr. F. Scott Fiel, the founder and CEO of PTEducator.com, which is a healthcare business and educational coaching and consulting company. We also have a guest speaker with us who will be recorded a little bit later in the presentation, and that is Dr. Kitty Roll Adderley. She's the owner of Handling Your Health and Wellness, Nassau, Bahamas.
All right, so after this session, we hope that all of you will be able to write a personal biographical statement that identifies your expertise and experience in your area of passion, that you'll locate your organizational strategic plans that best align with your proposal content, that you'll identify conferences that will best reflect the target audience of your proposal, and that you'll be able to draft a conference proposal outline that considers all of the things that we're going to talk about today. So first off, we're going to talk a little bit about us. Now, normally we would never really do this and we wouldn't put our bios up on the screen in a presentation, but there's purpose in this. So here they are, and we hope it makes sense later. So this is the bio that I used to create this proposal for this presentation. So you can see here that I started out with my background in doing speaking professionally. So we have APTA Combined Sections Meeting, American Congress of Rehab Medicine, APTA Texas and Michigan, several local public and system-based conferences, and then why speaking is important to me. So I am in academia. That means I have to do research and put research out there as part of my job. So I am a core faculty instructor at the University of St. Augustine, Dallas campus. And I teach in the pharmacology, geriatrics, and cardiovascular and pulmonary courses primarily. I also commented on my expertise and specialty. So I'm a board certified geriatric specialist, and I focus on the care of patients with advanced heart and lung disease. And I've also co-authored a textbook chapter that talks about how to do these things, which was published in Musculoskeletal Interventions. And in addition, I've published some other pieces that are specific to high-intensity interval training and managing patients with complex comorbidities. At the time that we initially presented this presentation, I was in the process of completing my doctorate of education, but it's done now.
Congratulations, Dr. Brockway. I'm Dr. F. Scott Fiel, husband, father, business owner, physical therapist, and most recently an Amazon best-selling author. Core faculty at the University of St. Augustine for Health Sciences at the Austin Flex program, and newly promoted to Senior Learning and Development Specialist, whatever that means. I haven't quite figured that out yet, but I'm sure I will at some point. Also a business coach, mentor, despite starting my journey as an English major before landing as a physical therapist. The creator and co-host of the Healthcare Education Transformation podcast, which aims at breaking down the silos between healthcare professions and trying to find best practices in teaching and learning throughout healthcare academia. Also, host of the Professor of Profit vlogcast on YouTube and in podcast form. I've spoken at APTA CSM, ELC, and PPS conferences, as well as several local and state level conferences. Areas of expertise includes geriatrics, business, leadership, and currently an assistant professor. So that's kind of my spiel. And again, we're not this vain, I promise, but this is the stuff that we use to show that we are accomplished speakers and that we are here to kind of show you that we know what we're talking about when getting chosen for these speaking gigs. So that's the kind of the why behind doing this. And then Dr. Kitty Roll Adderley, she's presented at the World Physiotherapy Congress, which is why we brought her on to help specifically talk about international speaking because nor Kaelee nor myself have done that. So Kitty was a great addition to this talk. She's passionate about education, dedicated to educating the public and professionals about physical therapy and wellness, hosted multiple physical therapy continuing education courses for PTs in the Bahamas. And Dr. Adderley is also the owner and senior physical therapist of Handling Your Health and Wellness and Rehab and Eczema Wellness and Rehab in the Bahamas.
So we're also going to give you a little more information on our background in presenting, and that really feeds into the same reason we put our bios up there. Why are we the ones who have this information to present to you? Well, humble brags, as you can see on the screen, between Scott and I, these are the proposals that we have had accepted to conferences for education sessions, posters, manuscripts, grant funding even. And a lot of times you can see in here that we started small. We built our conference experience and techniques by starting at local component meetings or continuing education specific to our employers, or we made stuff up for continuing education classes based on the knowledge and expertise we already had. When you are working in a smaller pool like that, like doing proposals for your employer, or at the state or local level, at the district level, the odds are a little bit more in your favor. There's a smaller pool of applicants, and sometimes these organizations are begging for applicants. So you don't really have to work as hard to get accepted, but it's a great way to build your experience. Posters are a really great way to get your proposals accepted because there's no expectation that you're going to have to get up in front of a big crowd and speak. However, here we are doing exactly that. Every proposal with a star next to it indicates where we were mentored by someone who knew a lot more about proposals and conferences than we did. And any of these listed with a double star are where we mentored somebody else.
Yeah, and one of the
However,
things,
along with acceptances comes denials.
I was going to say, one of the things that you can kind of see on my humble brags is Dr. Mary Blackington gave me my first opportunity at presenting. Essentially, she was a big wig at the ELC and running the conference, pretty much helping run it. So she wanted to talk about podcasting and higher education. That happened to be one of my specialties. So I was able to, get my first acceptance thanks to Dr. Blackington and all the people that were in our podcasting group to kind of help get that first presentation out there. Then once it did, it then kind of opened the doors and kind of started, with that momentum building as I got more and more. So now we can talk about some of the rejections that come along with all of these acceptances. And you can see here the list is plentiful. For me, it's a little bit more than my acceptance list. So the batting average isn't great. It's good for baseball, but not so good for conference acceptances. Or maybe it is. I don't know.
But what's really important about this is that you all need to know that getting rejected is normal. It's just kind of part of this process. So even this presentation got rejected once before it was accepted. It's also just really important, though, to not give up. You have to find the right audience, the right mechanism, and all of the other right things that have to line up for your presentation to get accepted. And sometimes that takes a lot of attempts.
Yeah, if I just kind of go through my story real quick, you can see as a relatively new grad PT, I was looking at a grant I had written, a small grant, about $5,000 for using the Nintendo Wii for rehab in an outpatient setting. And the hospital system I wrote it for loved it so much, they instituted it in all of their outpatient clinics. So I said, oh, well, this must be great. Let me put it into, CSM by myself for the neuro section. Well, that got rejected. So I said, okay, let's try a different section. Maybe it'll fit better in ortho. The next year, rejected. Finally, I said, well, maybe private practice would like this because private practice owners, are looking for a new tool or technique, and maybe they could use the Wii in their practice. It's fun, right? It's something they could try. Rejected again. So I said, all right, maybe they just don't like the Nintendo Wii. Maybe that's it. They just don't want to hear about that. So then I moved into my capstone project, which was the Q angle of jumping and landing with orthotics, and I put that out for the ortho section. Rejected. I said, all right, well, it was done with basketball players. Let's try it in the sports section. Rejected. I didn't know at the time, but those are pretty big groups with a lot of people trying to put their presentations out there. So it was against some stiff competition, right? So once I finally got my first crack at it and I got my first acceptance, I then started looking into other options and opportunities that I could do and kind of steamroll this with. And so I put some, feelers out. And now that I felt like, oh, I've got it. I know the way to get in now. I know the system. I just started trying, all sorts of different things. And I really felt like I was just kind of throwing darts at the wall for a while there and seeing what stuck. But as you can see, from 2022 to now 2024's submissions, still a ton of rejections there. And there's some really good topics there, some that were even interprofessional with doctors in the neurodiversity stuff. And those got rejected as well. So like Kaelee said, it's pretty normal to get rejections, but that hasn't stopped me from applying. I still have gotten a couple accepted despite these rejections, and I still plan on submitting more as I go. And I don't know, I guess every no just gets you kind of closer to that yes. So it hasn't dissuaded me yet. And I plan on keeping the pedal down. So, we'll keep trying and keep trying the things that we know work and these techniques and tools that have gotten us into the acceptance column.
All right. So now that we've told you a little bit about how we leverage our experience and expertise to write these proposals to hopefully get accepted, let's talk about the who, what, when, where, and why of why we do all of this work proposing to conferences. So, Scott, take it away.
Yeah, the why is super important here, right? Like, are you just doing it to do it? Are you just doing it because you want to see your name up in, the program? Or like, what is the why behind it, right? For a lot of people, tenure could be the reason. If you're in academia and you're trying to fit that tenure track and hit all your milestones and checkpoints, then you're going to need to perform and produce scholarly, products in some way, shape, or form. You're either going to need to publish, or you're going to need to present that at conferences, or you're going to need to get posters accepted, or some combination of all the above. I kind of feel like tenure is dying out little by little. I don't see it as often anymore. So for us in particular, we don't have a tenure track, but we do have a promotion track. And every couple of years, when you're up for promotion, you can submit your packet and show what you've done. And again, if you've checked all the right boxes, you can move up into that promotion track. So in order to do that, you need a couple of publications and you need some scholarly conferences, right? And so the peer-reviewed aspect of conferences is a big deal in the world of academia, right? The other thing too, it could be for demonstrating our expertise and authority, right? Nowadays, we like to try to start maybe in the generalist section, but then as we get more comfortable, as we find populations we love working with, as we find our niche and our thing, right? We really want to start narrowing down and getting really good at one thing in particular. And when we do that, it helps build that expertise and authority. And so if we can show that we're doing research on this stuff, or that we are really honing in our skill set and becoming that expert and authority, that's going to help when you try to put things out there on social media, or, in books, or, to sell courses or whatever it is that you're doing. If people start coming to you and asking you about a certain thing because they feel like you're the guy or the gal that wrote the book on it, or that is the expert on it, that helps in a lot of different ways. And really, the more and more conferences you can kind of put on your CV, the more it shows that you do have an expertise and authority, right? And again, a lot of it comes down to owning our area or our specialty, right? We want to make sure that we have a good command on what it is that's getting disseminated with regards to, the topic that we're specializing in. We want to be one of the forefront experts. We want to be seen as the person that is giving that information out there and that does have a finger on the pulse, right? We want to be the one that people come to give the right information to, right? We don't want to have a bunch of wrong information, especially nowadays in social media. It's very easy to have people out there kind of spouting out half truths or full untruths, if you will, right? And we don't want that. We want the best research and the best info that we can out there, and we want to help be the ones to give it, right? We want to help others just like us. We want other people that are interested in our thing to be spotlighted and highlighted and excel, right? And in order to do that, like Kaelee said, we have to mentor others. Once we've gotten accepted and we've done it over and over again, we got to help others. And we got to maybe even use our name and likeness to kind of bring them along and get them accepted for their first talk. And then they can spread their wings and start doing talks as well. we want to improve patient care, right? We want to make sure that the information is current, that it's best practices, it's gold standard type stuff. And in order to do that, we have to get that information out there, because overall, that brings us to our next step, and we want to improve healthcare education. Realistically, there's a pretty big gap between the white ivory tower of academia and the clinical world, right? There's like a 10-year delay before research gets out to the clinics. We don't want that. We want it faster. We want it quicker. We want to help get that information into the hands of the people that need it, the clinicians, right? So that they can give better patient care. So these can all be on your lists of why you want to get up and speak, but it shouldn't just be, well, I just want to speak. I just want to get accepted at a conference, right? There has to be a why behind it, because a lot of that drives passion too. And a lot of that can come through when you're writing up your proposal. So having a good why can really help inform you yourself as to, your path on how to go about doing this and how to get your message across to the people that are making the selections.
All right, but what should you propose, right? And this is where we really get into talking about your passion. What are you passionate about? What is your area of expertise? And this might be a place where you see a gap, right? You could be out there doing your practice and you're like, man, I'm the only one who's doing this thing that fills this gap. I really wish other people were doing this. Or why aren't other people doing this? That right there is you identifying something that you are now the expert on, because just like you said, no one else is doing it. And if you want others to do it, like Scott said, you have to get that information out there. So proposing to conferences can be a good way to do that. But there are lots of vehicles to get that information across that doesn't necessarily have to take the shape of a conference proposal. This session was proposed as an education session. So that's where we get up and we talk in front of people for 90 minutes to 2 hours and give our spiel about all of this stuff and try to educate our audience. But we also talked about research posters. Posters are a great way to get information out. Research platforms are a little bit different. They're like a shorter education session, but very, very intensely research focused. But maybe what you've got is a product or a procedure, and maybe a demo or pitch would really be more your thing. And maybe it's not the PTs that you're trying to get the ear of. Maybe it's the public. Maybe you really just want to get more people out there accessing our services for a specific thing. So maybe a public presentation would be a better mechanism for you to share your information. Scott mentioned continuing ed courses earlier, and you can even go as far as hands-on workshops with labs. Panel discussions are often held at conferences, even though they're not necessarily the same thing as an education session. So you could arrange the panel and moderate it and make sure that your questions kind of get at the information you're looking for with a group of experts. Or you could be on the panel and be asked and answered the questions. Immersive courses are another option where you really get into the whole experience, and they may be simulation based. And then there's advocacy platforms. Maybe the gap that you identified isn't necessarily a provision of care gap. Maybe it's a payment gap, or maybe it's a service provision gap, or a scope of practice gap. And then that advocacy platform is really going to be your best tool. So identifying the what of what you are going to propose really needs to take into account all of these other things, including who your best audience is, which is what we're going to cover next. All right, so how do you choose? What you really need to think about when it comes to your audience is who can make the biggest impact with the information that you have to share. Do they want to hear you talk or pitch, or do they want to see this thing in action that you're proposing? Or do they need to see your product? Or maybe you're their constituent and you have a concern that you need addressed. Whatever it is, you have to speak their language and really go to where they are. So, for example, we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but I am currently writing a manuscript with a co-researcher in Florida on managing pain in patients who have chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. This manuscript advocates for referral of these patients to providers who can manage all of their concerns to reduce disease burden, not just the COPD. So who controls referrals? Well, physicians do, right? And which physicians work with COPD patients? Pulmonologists, PM&R doctors. So I'm not going to put this manuscript in a PT journal because that wouldn't be the audience that I'm trying to target. I'm trying to target the physicians who are going to be prescribing services for my patients who have COPD. So our target publications and conferences are the ones that we're going to see the physiatrists at, like the American Congress of Rehab Medicine, and the journals that pulmonologists read, like respiratory medicine. And maybe your audience is family or caregivers, and you really need to get your information out to the public instead. Or you need to maybe present at a support group circle for those specific types of family members and caregivers that help the people who have the condition that you are passionate about treating. And maybe it's students. Maybe you need to get yourself a guest lectureship at a university so that you can talk to students about what it is that you're doing. And then there's all of the wonders of talking with sponsors and funding sources, trying to get people to financially support your work. And obviously that's more of a pitch type scenario. And then we already mentioned maybe you're a constituent. So maybe those legislators are really whose ear you want to grab.
All right, so major key alert for those DJ Khaled fans in the audience. Your bio should be different for every conference proposal you submit, and it should highlight why you are the expert and authority in this subject matter. And that's why we put our bios up and kind of went through them and showed which ones we used for this conference in particular, because it was important to see that we have exactly done what we said we do and that we're going to teach on, right? So your bio should be very specific for that conference and really highlight the things that you've done on your CV that are pertinent to that conference and you being the expert or authority speaker for that topic that you're going to present on. This is, probably one of the big things that I think that I learned over the years. I was just copying and pasting my bio from the website from my university, and that's not going to get you anywhere, right? That doesn't help. That's just a bland, generic, bio. If you really want to make the people who are making the decisions take alert and take note of what you're trying to accomplish and what you're talking on, show them why they should pick you over all the other people that are just copying and pasting their bios.
So let's take a look at an example of this. So I mentioned earlier that I was working on a manuscript for pain management and COPD. You have all already seen my bio that was used for this education session, but this is the bio that I used for that manuscript proposal when we proposed it as a poster to the American Congress of Rehab Medicine. So there's a couple things to point out here that you didn't know about me from my bio for this session. Like, I am the lead of the guideline development group for American Physical Therapy Association's cardiovascular and pulmonary COPD clinical practice guideline development team. That had nothing to do with this education session, but it has everything to do with why I'm trying to figure out how to best treat pain in patients who have COPD. There's also a lot of information in here about my clinical specialties and credentials. A lot of that was not in the bio for this session because it wasn't relevant to this session. This session is about getting accepted to conferences. That is what was relevant, not my clinical credentials. And then there's also information in here that did overlap a little bit. So I teach cardiovascular and pulmonary, geriatrics, and pharmacology. Those are all things really relevant to both settings, both the academic and the clinical. And then I have my research agenda on here as well. Complex chronic disease management for cardiovascular and pulmonary education. That's showing that not only am I out there practicing it, I am in the classroom teaching people how to do it better as well. So these bios are extremely different from one proposal to the other. They are not copied and pasted. They are very much tailored to the organization that's going to be grading my proposal so that that organization and the people who make those decisions know why I'm the best choice. All right, so that leads us to where, who, what, when, and where. So where can you best reach your audience, right? Is it at CSM or is it somewhere else? And how can you really know? Well, at CSM or Combined Sections meeting, academies and their individual strategic plans are what lead the content at Combined Sections meeting. So Scott had mentioned he proposed to neuro, he proposed to ortho, he proposed to sports, private practice. These are all some of the different academies whose strategic plans control the content that goes into Combined Sections meeting. So if you are looking for, I'm not really sure if CSM is the right place. I'm not really sure if one of those academies is right versus another. The best place you can go to find the information to make that decision is the academy's strategic plan. And you're going to find that on the academy's website. Every academy has a website, and the APTA also has links to every academy's website. You can go and read their strategic plan and see where best you fit in. You can also look at the strategic plans of other organizations. If CSM isn't really going to be it for you, kind of like I was trying to reach physicians, they're not going to go to CSM, right? I can look at the strategic plans of other organizations to see where my presentations are going to line up best. One of the projects that Scott and I both teach in our geriatrics course is we have our students create posters on a specific PICO question that they're investigating. Some of my students created an amazing investigation on the role of physical therapists in hospice and palliative care. So we are actually proposing their abstract to the conference for the Physicians Association on hospice and palliative care, mostly because we want to get the word out to physicians about how physical therapists can help best in that setting. All right, so then let's check out the when. Now, there's some personal, but also some external factors to consider when you're looking at the when of proposing to a conference. Personally, you have to decide on your workload and bandwidth. Can you make the deadline? So it's not just the deadline of the conference. There's usually a much earlier deadline for the proposals to be submitted. So when you're looking at proposing to a conference, you need to really go into that conference's webpage or that organization's webpage and look at the deadlines for proposals. Sometimes there's just one, and sometimes there are several, depending on what you're proposing and the mechanism through which you plan to present. And do you have time to put it all together and get it designed before the conference actually comes up? So those are some of the personal things. And also don't forget about the travel. That's kind of a big deal too. And then something else to keep in mind externally is that conference proposal deadlines change and frequently. I don't know why this torture afflicts us, but it does. And the deadlines sometimes move earlier if sessions fill up faster or if they get too many proposals, or the deadlines can be pushed later if maybe the conference hasn't gotten enough proposals or they feel like they haven't filled enough of the gaps in learning that they're looking to address. They are typically centered around a standard 2-week window if they're a yearly conference, but most conferences tend to be in the fall. So a lot of those deadlines are actually quite early in the year. We know that Combined Sections meeting is in the spring or very early spring, so February, and the session proposals actually open in January before the conference even starts, and they close sometime around April or May, depending on the year. Combined Sections meeting has moved around a little bit on the calendar in the last couple of years to avoid weather and other things, so that time frame has been shifting a little bit more. So make sure that you are out there and checking on it. Okay, and then there are some other considerations for conference proposals, and these are things that only a few people really think about. And those few people are the section programming chairs. And one of the reasons that I am doing this presentation is because I am a section programming chair for APTA Geriatrics. That means that I actually am one of the people who make the decisions about who gets to present at CSM and who does not. Please hold your tomatoes because I do not make these decisions on my own. I have a co-chair and a committee of more than 30 that help make these decisions. So I am not solely responsible, and apologies for any previous rejections. However, these things are what we have to consider when we're looking at how many sessions we're going to accept for each academy each year. So the first one is space. Different conferences are held at different physical geographical locations, dependent upon how many hundreds of thousands of square feet that they need. Combined sections meeting is so big and there are so many people that attend, we're pushing 20,000 again since COVID, that we can only be hosted at 5 or 6 conference centers in the United States because our conference is just that large, and those are the only ones big enough to host us. So if you're kind of thinking like, oh, they only ever go to California or, very certain locations, yes, there's a reason. You're right. And it's because those are the only places big enough for us. We're a very big professional conference, which is good, I think, anyway. But that means that there's a different amount of space available and a different number of rooms for every conference. So a different number of rooms, fewer rooms means fewer sessions that we can put on in 3 days. So location, the conference center in Orlando is much bigger than the conference center in San Diego. So in Orlando, we're going to have a lot more rooms and a lot more space and a lot more ability to put on more sessions and have more posters and do more platforms than we will in San Diego. And then also something to consider is funding. As a section programming chair, I thankfully am funded to go to CSM because I have to be there to run the programming for the entire week. But not everyone gets their trip covered. So if you are a presenter at CSM, you may get some funding from the section who's accepted your session, but not all sections do that. If you have questions about funding or space or locations in upcoming CSMs, you can always reach out to your section programming chair for the section you're looking to propose to and get answers to any of these questions. You can figure out who your section programming chair is by going to the section's website. And now let's look at the how of actually making these proposals. So it really does help to know the people who are making the decisions because you can reach out to ask them the questions that maybe you don't have the answers to about how to make your proposal the best. And my job as a CSM programming chair is to make every proposal the best. My job is to make my job as hard as it possibly can be, because that means we're going to have really good programming at CSM, and that's what I'm responsible for. So specific to CSM, we have the APTA component leadership. So that's going to be each state's individual component president, and then each academy's individual component president. Then below them is the committee of programming chairs. So that is all the programming chairs, myself included, from every academy in APTA. And then the section programming chairs. So I mentioned we had our co-chairs that help us out as well. And then we have our review committees. So every academy has a different way that they build their committee. Ours is a group of volunteers that are content matter experts in geriatrics. There are some people on that committee who know so much more about Parkinson's than I will ever know in my entire life. But I can probably say the same thing about heart and lung transplant in comparison to them. So all together, we make up this committee of experts who has a really large and broad and deep understanding of geriatric practice. A lot of academies use their special interest group chairs and members to help fill these committees and make these decisions. And some of them use other members of their academy leadership. So if this is something that you feel like you want to get involved in and learn more about, those are the ways that you can get involved. Some other considerations that you probably need to know from your section programming chairs are that there's actually a rubric, which we're going to go through shortly, how many time slots you're vying for, which academy might be best, and especially if you're deciding between maybe ortho or geriatrics for a session on patients with osteoarthritis. Best way to know is to ask us. And then let's not forget about the secret criteria. And I put secret in quotes because in all honesty, it is no secret. So I am happy to share with you the secrets to CSM proposal acceptance and development. So the first is that title is important. Your title of your session is the very first thing that is going to grab the attention of the people who are looking for sessions to go to in the app. We have the Convex CSM app, right? They're going through the app and they're thinking, what do I want to go to next? that title is going to be the only thing they see in there that's going to help make that decision. The other reason title is important is all the printed materials that come along with CSM. We still do print quite a few actual schedules and booklets of programming that go out, and the title is what's going to catch the eye of the people who are perusing that printed material. Especially if you can make it something creative or colorful or fun, that's really going to jump out to people and make them come to your session. Outline is also very important. So we have an outline of the session that covers all of the topics, and then it is also timed into your schedule. Both of these things are very critically reviewed, not just for too little content, but also for too much content. And we also look for the depth of content, and does that content really address the outline of topics that you said it would, in the way that you said you would address them. So we also look for, are you including things in your outline and schedule that are actually going to get people engaged in your content? This is a little bit further down on the list, but we call this active learning. No one wants to sit there for so long, for 2 hours, and just be talked at. They want to get involved in what they're learning, and that's really important. References are another thing that we're going to touch on, and we already covered the importance of your bio. Something that's popped up more recently is the phrase Monday morning ready. If you're presenting content that is clinically oriented, that content needs to make your audience Monday morning ready to use what you just taught them. That's what's going to attract the most attendees. And then it needs to serve the academy and its members, right? We talked about the strategic plan. The number of speakers and multi-part sessions we'll address as well, and then the overall number of proposals. So let's start by taking a look at this secret rubric that I mentioned. So like I said, not too secret and also not too complicated. We're scoring your proposals on 3 major content areas: the currency of your topic, and the significance to the academy and its members. So that's where the strategic plan comes in. What is the scope? What is the focus? And then it also needs to allow for questions and feedback from the audience. The second thing we're going to score on is your expertise on this topic. So remember, we talked about how important your bio is. That is the full scoring criteria for your expertise on this topic. So it's crucially important. And then the number of speakers is also important. 2 to 4 for a CSM session is really ideal. One person up there talking for 2 hours is not terribly visually or auditorily interesting. The speech therapists are hitting me over the head right now for saying auditorily wrong. But more than 4, and we're really concerned that your speakers aren't going to be able to get their own individual pieces of content in that 2-hour window. So more than 4 is kind of cautioned. And then grammar, spelling, and clarity. Come on, y'all. We're a professional society. We are professionals. We need to have our words spelled correctly.
Yeah, as a former English major, it's not too hard these days to use spell check. There's plenty of apps out there, Grammarly, etc. Like, run it through those. It takes a minute or two. Like that really, if you see a lot of spelling mistakes and it just, isn't well written, the grammar's not great, that's going to be a hard pass right off the bat.
Yeah, and whatever you write in your proposal goes word for word into our printed material and our app, our conference app. So we cannot have content that is misspelled and full of grammatical errors and isn't clear. And when it comes to these 3 major categories, we have a 5-point scoring system, which you can see here on the screen. And like I said, it's not terribly complicated. You either get a 1 for a really unacceptable proposal with a lot of major weaknesses, or you get a 2, which is not great, but has no real definition of what it means. There's also good, which is, it's okay, but there's probably 1 major weakness. Or there's 4, which is somewhere in between 3 and 5. And then there's strong, which is no major weaknesses. Now, this all being said, we are working on developing a better rubric, but there's no possibility that that's going to be in place for the next CSM, and maybe not even for the one after that. So then let's take a look at the parts of your proposal also. we already talked about the bios and how important those are. And I think we've really kind of beat that at this point. Please write a custom bio for your proposal. It is very important. But you're also going to have to write objectives for your proposal. We gave you our objectives at the beginning of this session. So if you need to go back and take a look at how those were written, please feel free to do that. But the objective tells the audience what they're going to take away from what you're teaching in that time. And a lot of academics are very familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, which we have pictured on the screen, but we know clinicians are not. So when you propose to CSM, we put a little link in the proposal that says, please use Bloom's taxonomy to create your objectives, and it's a link to Bloom's taxonomy. This is Bloom's taxonomy. So if you are, say, doing a beginner level session, you should really be writing your objectives down towards that remember and understand and maybe touch on apply type level. And Bloom's taxonomy provides you words for how to write those objectives. If you're doing an intermediate session, you're really looking at the apply and analyze level of Bloom's taxonomy. How can I use this information a little bit deeper? But if you're doing an advanced level session, which is fine, we need to see objectives that are in the evaluate and create level of Bloom's taxonomy. We need to see words like design, create. In our objectives, we included that you would write your own individual bio. So that's creating your own unique bio based on the information that we're providing you. And then you need to make it fun and engaging. Like I said, people don't want to sit for 2 hours. You need to really make it worth their time to come to your session, and your outline and title are what's really going to grab their attention. So if you're including some active learning, which we're going to touch on a little bit more in a minute, in your session, you need to put that in your outline so that people can see it right off the bat and make the decision that they want to come to your session, because they're not going to have to sit for 2 full hours, and they're probably going to come away with some physical skills. And one of the ways that we really hit on active learning in conferences is to use polling. But as crazy as it sounds, we still don't have the internet access at CSM in each session that is sufficient enough to support polling or other large bandwidth operations. So if you have links, we suggest you download them in advance, embed them in your videos and your presentation, and go test them at the speaker ready room before your session to make sure that they work. But there are different means of polling. You don't always have to use, these online systems. There are ways that require internet only to show the results, but can use just the regular Wi-Fi without killing the bandwidth to record people's responses. So we call these audience personal response systems, or PRSs. This QR code will take you to a video put out by MIT on how to use these personal response systems in a way that does not use internet. And there are some really great ideas in this video. But there's also more online tools out there, web tools that are coming out that can help you do this. Poll Everywhere, Kahoot, and Mentimeter are the 3 most common that we see used. Even at ELC, Poll Everywhere was used in several of the sessions, but it requires internet connection to show the results. So you can still poll everyone and not have a dedicated internet line. You just can't show everyone the results of the poll. You can tell them the results of the poll, though. That's fine. And you can even do really low tech stuff like raising hands or holding up cards. But it costs somewhere between $1,100 and $2,000 per room to have a dedicated internet connection at CSM. So it's not something that is financially feasible at this point for that conference. And then something that's been a really major topic lately is the use of AI, especially when it comes to manuscripts and conference proposals and all of those things. But there's good ways that you can use AI. You just have to be smart about how you do it. If you're not sure where to start on a proposal, AI is a really great way to get a really condensed literature review on a specific topic for what's already out there. You can feed it certain references and have it give you the summary of those things so you know what's already going on. You can also look at previous conference proposals and you can have AI summarize those for you too. The Convex platform for CSM is always available. I can go and pull up last year's CSM right now. So you can go in and look at some previous things that have already been accepted and get some cues from there. So other legitimate uses for AI when it comes to conference proposals are some of the things I've listed here. So I have used AI to generate abstracts from an entire manuscript worth of content. I usually have it generate 2 or 3, maybe 4 versions, and I kind of piece together the pieces that I like from each one and edit them to make sure that they do say what I intend for them to say. So it's not like a one and done, you hit the button and boom, you have an abstract. You do have to make sure that it's still correct. Abstract compression and sizing is critical for conference proposals. If you are doing a poster or a research platform, odds are you're only going to get to submit an abstract, and odds are it's only going to be 250 words. So you're going to need to compress everything that you have spent all your time on into 250 words. AI can help you do that really, really well. Again, do a couple different versions, edit it out, make sure it says what you want it to say. Every piece of social media advertising you are seeing right now from my academy for CSM was generated by AI. I had AI generate several different media postings for the content that we're going to be having at CSM based on different audiences. And you do this by using prompts. If you're looking into how to use AI with prompts, there you can actually ask AI to teach you how to use prompts, or it's very meta. Or you can just go and Google how to use prompts in AI. You can also use AI to generate social media posts to get your session advertised on your own. The more people that come to your session, the higher your ratings are, hopefully, and then the more likely you are to be invited back to speak again. You also have to submit references for all of your sessions, and that's another thing that we're going to spend a little time on here. So we actually do check every single one of the references that are submitted for our conference proposals. We check them for legitimacy, we check them for content, we check them for applicability, and we check them for recency. So it really helps if your references are formatted properly and that they include a DOI that will take us right to the article or abstract so that we know exactly what you're talking about. If you're not sure how to get the references you need to support the content that you know you want to present, say like for a presentation like this, where a lot of what we're talking about is from our own experience, there's still plenty of academic references that can back up what we're saying. Using your librarians to help backward reference what you already are trying to get out there is incredibly useful. And that's a technique that we used for this proposal as well. Backward referencing is also something that AI can do. You just need to make sure that the references are real, because AI is really good at faking references. And then you can also use AI to frame out your outline of your proposal. So say you're not writing an abstract, you're trying to propose an education session. Well, we still need an outline to know what it's about and a schedule to know what you're going to be saying and when. AI is a really good way to tell it, I want to put together, 300 words on this specific topic, and I want to cover all 10 of these things in 2 hours. Show me how I can do that. And it will give you options on how you can put all of that together, and you can then modify it as you go.
Yeah, AI is definitely coming. We might as well use it. However, we have to realize that, it's not going to write your whole proposal for you. It's not going to write it well. It's not going to reference it. You still have to do the work. But there is some time-saving tips here that Kaelee's given us that we really need to implement to try to make our life a little easier and really get the optimal version of what we're trying to propose when it comes to a conference proposal.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dr. Kitty from the Bahamas. You may be in this session because you're planning to submit a proposal, or you may have experienced the sting of having the proposal rejected. Was the proposal for the APTA's combined sections meeting, or was it for another prestigious conference? Have you poured your heart and soul into proposals only to be met with disappointment? I want you to know that you're not alone. I'm here today to tell you that these rejections are not a reflection of your expertise or dedication. The acceptance or denial of conference proposals is a complex web of factors that often go beyond what we might expect. We're going to learn more about that. I've presented at the World Physiotherapy Congress, and I've also had a proposal rejected from the World Physiotherapy Congress. I've experienced both sides of the coin. I want to share with you how, as passionate physical therapy professionals, you can integrate your unique skills and knowledge from outside our profession into your presentations. Let us begin with a simple truth. Our field of physical therapy is vast and comprehensive, and its applications can extend far beyond the boundaries of our traditional practice. I recently received a certification as a herbal physician. This newfound knowledge of phytotherapy has opened up worlds of possibilities for me in my physical therapy practice. Additional certifications and expertise can do the same for you. Think about it. How often have you encountered patients whose well-being could be enhanced by a holistic approach, incorporating herbal medicine, nutrition, or mindfulness into their treatment plans? Our patients are not just physical beings. They are complex individuals with a wide range of needs. By integrating your expertise from other fields, you can offer a more holistic and personalized approach to physical therapy. Now, you might be wondering, how can you take this knowledge and share it with the world through conference presentations? The answer lies in understanding what conference programming committees are looking for in a proposal. First and foremost, they seek presentations that offer unique perspectives and innovative solutions to pressing issues. By integrating your expertise from outside the profession, you bring a fresh angle to the table, something that can truly stand out. You're not just talking about physical therapy. You're showcasing how physical therapy can be enhanced and enriched by interdisciplinary knowledge. Furthermore, conferences are hungry for presentations that make real-world impact. Your newfound skills and insights can contribute to improving patient outcomes, enhancing quality of care, and advancing the field of physical therapy in ways that you may have not thought of that may have been possible. So, how do you get started? Here are some steps to consider. Identify your passion. Reflect on your interests and expertise outside of physical therapy. What are you truly passionate about? Whether it's herbal medicine, nutrition, psychology, or any other field, identify where your heart lies. Seek certification, training, or mentorship. Just as you pursued your education and certifications in physical therapy, invest in training and certifications in your chosen area of expertise. This will not only deepen your knowledge, but also provide credibility. Look for integration opportunities. Explore how your knowledge can complement and enhance your physical therapy practice. Are there specific patient populations or conditions that could benefit from this integration? Craft your proposal. When submitting a conference proposal, focus on the practical applications of interdisciplinary knowledge. Showcase how it can improve patient care, amplify physical therapy, and be sure to emphasize real-world impact. Don't forget to network and collaborate. Connect with professionals in your chosen field and within the conference circuit. Collaborative presentations such as this one brings together diverse expertise and are often well received. Be visible. Whether you use your social media accounts, blogs, or articles, find ways to make your work visible. Build up interest. Your social media following may add extra consideration from the conference committee. Remember, presenting content from outside of the profession isn't just about showcasing your skills. It is about making a larger impact to the world. It is about breaking down the silos that sometimes limit our perspectives and embracing a more holistic approach to patient care. By integrating your passion and expertise from other fields into your physical therapy presentations, you have the power to reshape the way we practice and improve the lives of our patients. I look forward to sharing with the physical therapy profession my newly acquired knowledge and skills and highlighting the way I will integrate phytotherapy into my physical therapy practice. I encourage you to explore the possibilities beyond the PT field, integrate your diverse knowledge, and step onto the conference stage with confidence. Stay encouraged. Let's together make a larger impact on the world and elevate the practice of physical therapy to new heights. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to witnessing the innovative and holistic presentations that will emerge from this inspired group of physical therapy professionals. Thank you very much.
All right, another major key alert. Get mentoring. I mentioned this at the beginning of our talk here that, again, the only reason I was ever even given a chance at my first presentation was because Dr. Mary Blackington mentored me on conferences and proposals and what good topics are and what good titles are and what you're trying to show, what you're trying to teach, what you're hoping, through objectives your audience leaves with, right? And we had a really great turnout for our presentation. And I'd love to say it had anything to do with me, but it was really people coming to learn a little bit about podcasting, but mostly hear Dr. Blackington speak. So she was my mentor. She was great. One of the things that helps is reaching out to big names, academics, researchers, people who have done this before, people who have the experience. They've been to conferences, they presented a bunch. You can literally talk to them because, again, they're already content experts. They love talking about this stuff. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it for major parts of their career, right? So given that they have the track record already, it's almost like lending their name to your proposal and your presentation. Oh, and by the way, you get to work with some pretty amazing people too, right? So it helps in so many ways. You can learn from them. You can work with them. You can utilize their name to get that expertise on your proposal. But the biggest thing is just kind of learning some of the little intricacies and the things that you don't even think about and you wouldn't know about unless you did it for 10, 20 years, right? So take those tips, take those tricks, take those pointers to heart, and then go out and be a mentor, right? Like we talked about, like once you get in, once you've spoke at a bunch of conferences, give back, right? Mentor others, lend your name out to other people who are looking to get into the conference speaking game. So, learn, get a mentor, learn from them, and then give back and help teach, right? And educate others and help them get accepted.
And my first CSM acceptance was also mentored. I was, going to propose to Cardiovascular and Pulmonary Academy, and it was just me and one other person, and we were going to talk about high intensity interval training, which is something I am super passionate about. But we didn't have the depth of content that really was going to lead to a good session. So we paired up with the guy who literally wrote the book, the guy who wrote the clinical practice guideline on heart failure management, which included high intensity interval training, Dr. Mike Shoemaker. And we pulled him into the project and got him involved. Not only did he take our content to a whole new level that I had never expected, and it has been amazing since then, but also putting his name, associating his name with our content is, in my opinion, probably one of the biggest factors that got us accepted, because he is known as the expert when it comes to heart failure management. And not to mention developing that relationship, we're still doing projects together today. So these are not just, a one and done, get your name on something kind of project. These can lead to getting a lot of other major projects out there as well. All right, so those are all the secrets when it comes to getting your conference proposals accepted. And let's be real, nothing was really a secret now, wasn't it? It's really just putting in the time and the work to make sure that you've got a really good proposal, and these are the parts that you need. So if you have any other questions, you can always reach out to your section programming chair or us. So my contact information is here on the screen.
Mine's here as well. And one thing that you guys really need to take away from this entire thing is you could do every single thing that we gave you there, every tip, trick, tactic, everything in the book, do it correctly, do it well, do it perfectly, and still get rejected. Like, it's just not as cut and dry and black and white as it seems. And that's why we encourage you to never give up. Literally, keep trying. I can't even tell you how many times I've been rejected at this point. It doesn't faze me any. Like, you do the best you can, you put your best effort out there, doesn't work out. Okay, you get back on the horse and you try again. So please, please, please don't get discouraged if you've gotten rejected once, twice, or 7 times, like some of us, before getting your first acceptance, right? It's bound to happen. If you really want to, if this is something that you're passionate about and you love and you really want to do not give up. Keep trying. And again, feel free to reach out if you have any other questions or just want to learn more about, how we go about doing it. So thank you guys so much. We appreciate it. We hope this was helpful. And like I said, keep trying. Don't ever give up.